I literally remember being like probably 7 or 8 years old and my grandpa trying to give me cod liver oil. And it was the closest that I ever felt to yelling at him. I never yelled at my grandpa. I knew better. But it was the closest that I ever got to yelling at him because I hated that stuff. Cod liver oil has come a long way now. Now it's not in like a stinky, gross bottle and you don't have to take it in a spoon. Point is that I think there are some tremendous benefits to cod liver oil. And anyone that has ever talked to me at length knows that I'm not a big supplement guy and I have a very small amount of supplements that I do take, and cod liver oil is one of them. I'll come right out and say, I mean, you probably don't even have to watch the rest of this video. You can just trust that it is one of the things that I highly recommend. So this is a video breaking down why cod liver oil is really one of the supplements that you really need to be adding into your daily routine, especially as you start getting north of like 30 and some of these inflammatory kind of things in your body start kicking up. Let's go ahead and break it down. Using that link below, you can save 25% off your entire Thrive Market grocery order. I'm talking your entire grocery cart. So you go online to Thrive Market using that link, you shop, you get whatever perishable foods you want, like seafood and sustainable meat options, plus all the non-perishable stuff. So you can get your pantry stocked up, you can get your keto goodies, you can get your paleo goodies, everything you could think of, all with like better for you options and things that have been vetted out in terms of being just better for you options. So really cool stuff, and that link down below makes it easy. And then it gets delivered to your doorstep, super easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Again, 25% off plus a free gift when you use that link down below for Thrive Market. The first benefit that I want to talk about comes from the side of our joints, like stiff joints, achy joints, which doesn't matter what age you are, it's something that you pay attention to. Now, before I was maybe 30, it wasn't on my mind at all, but as I'm getting older, yes, I notice these things, but I talked to a ton of people that notice them. So there was a study that was published in Advances in Therapy. It took a look at subjects that had rheumatoid arthritis, okay, and it gave them 1 gram of cod liver oil every day for 3 months. They found that there was a 52.4% reduction in joint stiffness from baseline after 3 months. That is really unbelievable. What's potentially going on here? Well, we'll explain that in a second, but there's some more. There was a 42.7% reduction in overall painful joints. So just the pain itself was actually seemingly reduced. Then there was a 67.5% decrease in the intensity of the pain. So even though the instance of pain would occasionally still be there, it was significantly less intense. So what's the mechanism here? What is happening? Well, researchers didn't really go that far into it. This was purely observational and really kind of like looking at what's called an intervention. So they weren't necessarily looking at the full mechanism. But when you start looking at the data, you realize, okay, cod liver oil contains vitamin A in a significant amount. 1 serving of cod liver oil is like 90% of your RDA of vitamin A. It contains 113% RDA of vitamin D. Then it has anywhere from like 800 to 1,000 milligrams of omega-3s in the way of a nice balance of eicosapentaenoic and docosahexaenoic acid. So we have essentially an anti-inflammatory cocktail that really just makes sense, okay? Now, one of the things that we have to factor in as we get older is we have what are called damage-associated molecular patterns. These are, it's a result of basically cells leaking out DNA because they're getting older and they're getting more damaged, okay? That happens. The mitochondria leaks more DNA, and that signals the immune system to come and kind of clean up the DNA and repair whatever damage there is. Why am I mentioning this? Well, anytime the immune system or that inflammatory response is called into action, you have, well, you guessed it, an inflammatory response, right? So inflammation, chronic potential, like this potential chronic inflammation that goes as we get older. So when you start looking at the vitamin A, you look at the vitamin D, and you look at the potential anti-inflammatory effects of omega-3s on the NLRP3 inflammasome, yeah, we can see why this makes sense, especially in an older population. But let's talk about some other things. What are some other things we have to pay attention to as we get older a little bit? Maybe we don't think about it until it's becoming an issue, but what about our eyesight? What about things like macular degeneration? Well, again, it comes down to cod liver oil containing preformed vitamin A. So we have 2 different kinds of vitamin A. we have preformed, which comes from like cod liver oil, comes from liver, comes from just animal sources. And then we have basically the non-preformed, okay, the carotenoids that have to form retinal and retinoic acid and ultimately form vitamin A. That's going to be things like carrots, other vegetables that have carotenoids in them, some seeds, some seed oils, things like that. The preformed version is definitely the better one because it's already preformed. There was a study that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Ophthalmology, and it found that people that had the highest levels of vitamin A ended up having a 25 to 35% less chance of developing macular degeneration that's associated with aging. This is a very important thing to pay attention to because as we get older, the synergy between vitamin A and vitamin D becomes even more important, especially as you start looking at keratinocytes in the skin cells and things like that. So long story short with this is it has a protective effect with the eyes. The vitamin A does. So when we look at cod liver oil being such a bioavailable source of vitamin A, especially if your calories are limited because you're not eating as much, this is a very powerful bang for the buck. Now I want to talk immune system. As we get older, we obviously have to pay attention to the immune system. And there's a couple of things that happen. And there's some studies that had mentioned this that I referenced in some other videos. Essentially, as we get older, we develop a little bit more of an overactive innate immune system and an underactive adaptive immune system. So we become a little bit more chronically inflamed dealing with like threats that are already kind of existing in our body from damage and things like that. And we become a little less good at dealing with external threats and things like that, right? So what that means is we do need to pay attention to some attributes of vitamin A, because vitamin A plays a very critical role in the formation of B cells and T cells when it comes down to the immune system. These are the cells that are like the hunters and killers that go out and find things, find pathogens and label them. And there was an interesting study that was published in the Proceedings of the Nutrition Society, okay, and it took a look at people that were deficient in vitamin A, okay, found that people that were deficient in vitamin A typically had overactive T cells, or T cells that overreacted, this leading to a potential increase in chronic inflammation. So it's something we pay attention to. We know there's some mechanism there, we know there's some connection, so we have to look at that big picture. Okay, if we have this overactive immune system as we get older, and it's reacting to simple damage from our cells that is occurring with more prevalence as we age, then you could see that, wow, yeah, whenever the immune system is called into action to deal with those things, it's going to overreact. And that kind of couples up along with the joints part that I was talking about, right? So that inflammatory response could occur, of course, in your joints, making you feel stiff. So again, it becomes very, very important with that. But now I want to talk about the mood a little bit. And I referenced this in another video before, but there's a potential mental piece that we have to look at with cod liver oil, okay? Because when you look at an interesting Norwegian observational study that took a look at over 21,000 people, it starts to paint an interesting picture. They found that of those 21,000 plus people, those that consumed cod liver oil on the regular, they had a 2.5% chance of developing depression or anxiety. Those that were not consuming cod liver oil had about a 3.8% risk. So there was a significant increase in the potential risk for depression and anxiety. Although it's observational, so we can't say with absolute certainty, but let's break down with two more studies why this might be happening. Well, the Cochrane Systematic Database Review took a look at 26 studies, okay, with over 1,400 participants in this case, and they found that omega-3s seemed to play a slight role in improving depression. Now, again, we don't know with absolute certainty, but it's a large study, and we can see, okay, you look at some data with like membrane fluidity and cells being able to communicate better with one another and potential neuroinflammation being modulated, that maybe you have an effect there. But not enough to really look at a 2.5% to 3.8% difference like we saw in that Norwegian study. So what's the other mechanism here? Well, the British Journal of Psychiatry had published a study looking at 31,000 plus people, and they found that those that were lower in vitamin D had higher levels of depressive symptoms. So now we see, cod liver oil has omega-3s, it has vitamin D, and then whatever link might be there with vitamin A. Now, vitamin D has been kind of linked with feeling good simply because we may have cells in our brain that have vitamin D receptors. And when vitamin D binds to those, there's a potential increase in the feel-good neurotransmitter called serotonin. Now, that's one theory, but there's so many moving pieces with vitamin D. Like, we're just now scratching the surface with what vitamin D does within our body. But overall, we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, well, there's all these cool benefits of it. But at the same time, people are not wanting to take cod liver oil because it sounds disgusting. Or they're thinking, oh, well, I just need vitamin D, so I'm going to take a vitamin D supplement. Well, like I've mentioned in other videos, if you want vitamin D, getting it from cod liver oil makes more sense because not only are you getting the bioavailable vitamin D, but you're also getting the A, and you're also getting the omega-3s. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel and always be a skeptic. Check things out for yourself, try them out, and see how you feel. I'll see you tomorrow.